General Sir Brian Mahan. He lived in Mullabowden House. That's probably a house. How many people here have heard of Mullabowden House? A few people, yeah, because I never heard of it when somebody mentioned to me last year as doing an assignment on. It's a big house between Ballymore Eustace and Naas. About 2 kilometres from Ballymore, and on the Naas Road you turn into the left. And it was burned down in 1923 during the Civil War. It was one of the 2 big houses that were burned in Kildare during the Civil War. The other one was Palmerston House in Johnstown. The Earl of Mayo was on that. And I was looking in, was there any big houses burned in Wicklow? And I've just found one, Glendalough House. And could anyone confirm that actually, I found that on the internet today, but I couldn't find any other.
I think Tynode House was burnt.
Was it?
Either 1916 or 1921-22.
Right, okay.
I think 21-22 as far as I remember.
That's right.
Right.
Saunders Grove, was that burned?
Sorry?
Saunders Grove near Maltona.
Was it?
I'm not sure.
No, I looked and I couldn't see, and it said Glendalough House, but actually there were 76 big houses burned during the War of Independence, and there was 199 houses burned in the Civil War, which brings, I don't know, what, 275 houses. They're the figures by Professor Terry Dewey in Newton. He's the expert in Ireland on that. But anyway, let's get back to this. So there's 3 parts to it. It's General Sir Brian Mahan, the burning of Mullabowden House, and the killing of Neil Clonard O'Boyle, who's an interesting character as well. I don't know that many people have heard of him. He was shot on the way to Glendalough, which we'll talk about later on. Anyway, let's talk about this guy. Right, when he was born, he wasn't obviously a general or Sir General. He was just Brian Mahan. He was born in Belleville, County Galway, and he was the son of Henry Blake Mahan, landowner, and his wife Matilda, daughter of Colonel Thomas Seymour of Ballycastle, County Galway. From that you know straight away they were a wealthy family. They owned 1,789 acres in the county. Now, they were a Gaelic Irish family who changed to Protestantism sometime in the 1700s. They were well in with the Earl of Clanrickard, and they kept their lands, basically. I was asked a question lately, were they the same Mahans in Strokestown? I'd say if you go back far enough, they could have been. But they had land in Galway, the Mahan family were Galway and Roscommon. But this branch of the family had previously land in Gort. They had a house in Gort in South Galway, and they moved to Bellevue in North Galway, which is a parish in Monaghan, not too far from Athenry. Now, he was educated locally, and like a lot of sons of the landed gentry, he was commissioned into the British Army in January 1883, and into the 21st Hussars, and he shortly transferred into the 8th Irish Hussars. The Hussars would be a cavalry regiment. Now, as usual, as you know from back then, it was a colonial army. The British were sent all over the world. Mahan was sent to India first, and he was promoted to captain in 1888. In 1893, he resigned his commission and joined the Egyptian army. At the time, the Egyptians were fighting the Muslim Mahdists in Sudan, and he joined the Egyptian army to fight them. He served in the Anglo-Egyptian reconquest of Sudan from the Muslim Mahdists from 1896 to 1899. He finished the campaign as a brevet colonel and twice mentioned in he was twice mentioned in dispatches. Now, brevet colonel, I didn't know what a brevet colonel was, but brevet colonel was kind of a temporary colonel. He was promoted, but he wasn't full colonel. Okay, so that's where he operated. That's Sudan. You might have heard of Darfur. There was a famine there in the recent past. You can see Khartoum. You might have heard of General Gordon, who was killed there. He was a British war hero. He was killed there in 1884, I think. Now, this was during the colonial times where Britain ruled for the world or whatever. Okay, so Emily was posted to South Africa in January 1900 at the outbreak of the Second Boer War and originally commanded the colonial mounted troops. He was a cavalry officer. In 1900, the local rank of Brigadier General, he was given the command of the Afghan Relief Force with authority of 1,100 men. He evaded to the American superior force and relieved the town on the 17th of May. The news of the success was greeted by wild enthusiasm in London, and he was awarded a CB. Now this, as we find out, was the high point of his career. Now the CB, I didn't know what a CB was. A CB is the order, it's a companion of the Order of the Bat. It's an order of chivalry, and the reason they're called that is because before they got the award, the night before they had a bath. For some reason. No, it was a purification rite, and then they were awarded it. No, it wasn't a knighthood, so he didn't get the name Sir after that, but later on. In 1901 then he was sent back to Egypt and appointed governor of Kordofan. He was promoted to a full colonel in 1904, served as the governor of the Belgaum district of India, and then he was promoted to Major General in 1906 and commanded the Lucknow division from 1909 to 1913. Now, that's his colonial record up to 1913. We all know what happened in 1914. World War I broke out in August, and then British had a big problem. They basically had a colonial army which was quite small. They were in France. They ruled the world with their navy more than anything else. So they had to raise an army, and this is where this guy comes in. Everybody probably knows him, Kitchener. Lord Kitchener, he was Secretary of State for War. Actually, he was born in Ireland, near the Stolen County Kerry. His father and mother come from England, and they got land in the unencumbered estates. They bought land in the Unencumbered Estate Act in 1849. They moved in. He was born in 1850. Now, I know Wellington has been supposed to have said this just because he was born in Ireland as well. He said that a man may be born in the stable, but that does not make him a horse. So this guy would have agreed with that. He never regarded himself as Irish or Anglo-Irish. He just regarded himself as English. But anyway, so he was raising his army. Now, one of the first divisions he raised was the 10th Irish Division. And this was formed under the command of Mahon, as we met, General Mahon, the guy we've been talking about. He was described at this time as a chain-smoking but agile man with a bronze complexion and slim build. Right, I don't know, if he spent all the time in India and Africa and so on, I presume that's why he might have become bronzed. Or that was the cigarettes maybe, but anyway, most of the division's troops were Irish by the time he was formed and fully trained in 1915, and he was actually trained in the Curragh. Most of the soldiers at the beginning were Irish. They were picked from battalions, picked from Irish regiments, like the Royal Dublin Fusiliers, the Munster Fusiliers, etc. So, yeah, one of the things I had always a problem, what's the division, what's a brigade, and so on. A division would be between 12,000 and 14,000 soldiers, plus artillery, plus engineers. So the battalions then would be about 1/3 of a brigade. Brigades would be about 6,000, I think 5,000, so you're talking about 2,000 men in a battalion. So you had, it was full of these mixed battalions. You didn't have full Irish regiments, you had the battalions which were parts of the regiments. Regiment and brigade is kind of around the same numbers. Anyway, he was sent to, I'll just move ahead one there for a minute. Now, I don't know whether you heard of the Dardanelles or Gallipoli, but in 1915, the Turks entered the war on the side of the Central Powers, the Germans. The Dardanelles is where the Mediterranean joins the Black Sea. There's a narrow channel there going in by Istanbul. The Russians wanted a warm weather port. They were cut off, so the British, the French, and Indian soldiers course, and the Anzac, the Australians and the New Zealanders landed here in early 1915, in April. They were repulsed. Then the British landed in August. What we're trying to do is drive the Turks from here. And you might have heard the song, the band played Waltzing Matilda. That's what this is about, that the Australian guy landed here. And the problem was the Turks, completely underestimated the Turks. They thought the Turks were a bit primitive in their soldiery, but they were well up to defending the heights where they were going to land. Oh yeah, by the way, Winston Churchill was the Lord of the Admiralty who actually was behind this. This was his idea. I think it didn't go well for him after. I think he was got the sack. And he actually had to serve in the Western Front after that. In 1916 or something like that. Anyway, he survived. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But, just go back here for a minute. Okay. In this exhibition, the British exhibition, it was led by a guy called Sir Ian Hamilton. It was the Mediterranean Expeditionary Force to land in Suvla Bay in August 1915. And he said about Mahon, he was good up to a point and brave, but not up to running a corps out here. Now, a corps is 2 or 3 divisions. Mahon was a divisional commander. So, Mahon landed in Suvla Bay, the 10th Irish landed in Suvla Bay with the 11th Division, which was called the 9th Corps, on the morning of the 7th of August. Now, they came under a huge amount of fire from the Turks up in the hills. They got bogged down, and the corps commander got sacked because they just completely got bogged down. The corps commander was replaced by a guy called, the corps commander was Stopford, but he was replaced by a fellow called Delisle, who was junior to Mahon. Now, in the army, to be replaced by someone who's your junior, or being overlooked by someone who's your junior, is not good. So what happened was, and this is, Mahon sent a message to Hamilton, his commander, saying that for private reasons he did not want to serve under Delisle. So what he did was, Hamilton straight away ordered him to board a vessel for the island of Lemnos, which was just offshore, to get out of the way. And after a few days, Mahon regretted his decision and messaged Hamilton that he would now be willing to serve under Delisle. Okay? So he left his post basically. He said he didn't want to serve. He was sent away, and then he said, I want to go back again. So normally, if that was just a normal soldier, you can understand what might have happened. He wouldn't have been, he would never have asked to come back because he wouldn't be around to come back. So, amazingly, Hamilton allowed him back after 9 days. In a letter to Kitchener, and Kitchener, as I said, was the Secretary of State for War, Hamilton revealed that he was very nervous about his temperamental Irish general who would refuse to play up and sink his personal jealousies during a difficult period. For his part, Mahon later sent a letter to Kitchener in which he disclosed his distress about what happened to his 10th Division. Now, he said it was like a kind of he was trying to explain his position, but it was a bit childish. He said he claimed that his unit was broken up before landing and one of his brigades was sent to Anzac Cove. He'd heard nothing in 5 weeks, so he lost one of his brigades that were sent to help the Australians and the New Zealanders. Furthermore, he claimed he did not know where most of his division's artillerymen were. He claimed the artillery didn't back him up, so he'd no artillery support. Later, he maintained that his division's fighting strength was decreased by 50% due to losing a brigade, and that their treatment would have a bad effect on the recruitment in Ireland, especially in the south and west, where the best soldiers came from. Now, that's important, because he's using the Irish card here. His soldiers were Irish, and he was saying, if I'm gone, the danger would be, remember the British were in dire straits at this time for recruits, and I presume he was saying that if I'm gone, the recruiting will peter out, or not peter out, will die down a bit. That he was using that card, I presume. Now, and we can see later that what could have happened. But in October 1915, he transferred British division to Salonika as part of the Allied effort to assist the Serbian army and served as British commander-in-chief until May 1916. So he was sent to Salonika with his division. It is certain that Hamilton would have replaced him, but for fears of protests in Ireland. While Mahon remained a popular figure with his men, his withdrawal from command at such a critical juncture in the campaign was reprehensible. Nobody seems to know why he wasn't court-martialed, but it was probably for that reason. There was a protest in Ireland. Some of you might have heard of Salonika before. Salonika is actually Thessalonica now in northern Greece. And what we're trying to do, you see Serbia there? Serbia were being overrun by the Bulgarians. They'd entered the war with the support of the Germans and the Turks, and they were sent to try and hold Serbia, but they didn't succeed. But they held the line. If you see the dotted line there in the south of Serbia, the Allies held that line. There weren't just Allies, there was French there as well, and Indian troops. And eventually they were just trying to stop the Central Powers getting into Greece. But yeah, there's our friend Mahon there on the second from the right, what I presume is a French officer beside him. Looks like a French cap anyway. Okay, so that's Salonika. Hello. Oh yeah, this is something I found. These are up in the Guildhall in Derry, and two beautiful stained glass windows to commemorate the three Irish divisions who fought in World War I. The one on the left is the 36th Irish Division, also called the Ulster Division. They were the division that the UVF joined before the war, and they mostly served on the Somme, and then you had the two Irish divisions, the 10th and the 16th on the right. The 10th, we're talking about the 16th, served on the Somme, but also in Ypres, lost with heavy losses. They were again an Irish division, like the 10th division. Okay, so and returns to Ireland, is it? Yeah. What happened then is, okay, after 1916, John Maxwell was the commander of British soldiers in Ireland. He commanded, or he had court-martialed the 1916 leaders, and he ordered them to be executed. 16 were executed, and the problem now was that the British wanted to get rid of, because it gave a lot of bad publicity for the English, for British, especially in America. They wanted to get rid of Maxwell because they were afraid of another rising, actually. They were afraid of aggravating the Irish. So they got rid of Maxwell and they brought in Mahon. Now, Mahon was brought in because he was Irish, and definitely the soldiers seemed to like him, and he was going to kind of smooth the waters. That's what his role was. So the Evening Herald reported on the 6th November 1916 that Sir Brian Mahon replaces Sir John Maxwell in the Irish command, and added, according to the Westminster Gazette, Sir Brian has a great advantage in not having been concerned in the suppression of the rebellion. He's an Irishman in touch with Irish feeling and a wide experience of affairs. We hope for good results for his presence on the island. Now, how true that was, we do not know. In Shaw's, oh yeah, this is something I found in the De Valera. In the De Valera, when he died, his papers were given to UCD and they had digitalized them. So I found this when I was researching this. Mahon, I found dispatches between Mahon and his commanding officer Shaw. And something I never realised, that the British were afraid of another rising in Ireland in 1917, because the volunteers were coming back from being released from internment camps in England, and they were afraid of them. They were, what's the word, radicalised by the 1916, by the executions, and they were afraid of another rising, which I hadn't realised. So in one of the letters, Shaw is writing to Mahon, And he refers to various sources of information that indicate a rising was not imminent. Still, he communicates to Mahan to be prepared for the possibility. Shaw emphasises that reinforcements could only be sent if absolutely necessary. Basically, he was saying, he emphasised, don't come looking for any more soldiers. I cannot give you any unless absolutely necessary. He made sure that, one thing he said, made sure that the communications between the Curragh and Dublin, that he had commanded those. And the other thing he said that Mahan replied, and he said he had a plan ready in the event of a landing by the enemy or serious internal disorder or both. Again, we're fearing a sea landing. The Germans had tried to land arms in 1916, as you know. Mahan displayed a sympathetic attitude to national grievances, but was replaced at the insistence of Lord French, appointed Viceroy in May 1918. The Daily Chronicle suggested that the principal value was in Ireland, and that his removal renders the Irish storm cloud appreciably blacker. Now, the reason he was removed might come apparent in a minute. Right, what did Mahan do then? He served as military commander of Vale from October 1918 to 1919, then retired in 1921. In 1920, this is where Mulla Bowden comes in. He married Amelia Magdalene Louisa Milbank. Is the widow of Sir John Milbank. Right, her husband was Sir John Milbank. He'd been killed during the Suda Bay landings. And she was the daughter of the third Earl. She was a Crichton from Fermanagh. They had bought this house. I'll talk about the house in a minute. They had no children. They lived in Mullaboden House in the towns under Cocklestown, West Ballymore. In 1922, Mahan was appointed as Senator to Free State by William T. Cosgrave, President of the Executive Council, which would be the Taoiseach today. And that's an appointment that Mahan held until his death. When the Free State government was formed, the provisional government, the Shannon was formed, but they wanted to appoint Protestant Unionists to the Shannon, maybe to kind of, for optics, but also to appease them because they were beginning to lose their land, etc. It was kind of to be fair or whatever. I don't know if I'm using the right word there, but so there's Mullaboden House as it is today. This, I don't know whether that map is very clear, but you can see Ballymore there, the road to Naas. You see where that red triangle is there on the left? Mullaboden is approximately there, Mullaboden House. Okay, now most of the house was burnt. This bell tower, I think, is an original, but most of it was burned in the burning. Okay, Mahan was appointed as senator, as I said. Now, in an interesting note, that it is witnessed, right, W.D. Cosgrave gave a witness statement to the Bureau of Military History in 1947, and in it he said that on the death of Thomas Ashe in September 1917, now Thomas Ashe was a volunteer in the Easter Rising. He commanded the battalion in the Battle of Ashbourne. Now there was 11 RIC men killed there and 2 volunteers, but he surrendered. He was from Kerry, he was a teacher in Dublin. Actually, the Ashe family were related, if you go back a few generations, to Gregory Peck, the Hollywood actor. Now some people here might remember Gregory Peck. Most of you would remember Gregory Peck, but young people mightn't. But anyway, that there was some kind of a connection there. Sorry?
He's related to Aidan Cruz as well.
Gregory Peck or Thomas Ashe?
Thomas Ashe.
Is he? Oh, very. He's from Lispo. He was from Lispo near Dingle, and he was a teacher. Of course, when he came up to Dublin, he was a member of the Gaelic League, the GAA. He was a volunteer, but he was also in the IRB. And what happened was he was going to be executed himself and De Valera. But I think what happened was they were near the end, and there was such an outcry of so many being executed that he wasn't executed, but he was interned in Francois. And when he came back, he joined volunteers again. he gave a seditious speech down somewhere down the Midlands, and he was arrested and he was put into jail again. Then he went into hunger strike. They tried to force feed him. I don't know if you've seen it on television. You know, there's troops put down. He got a lung infection and he died. And when he died, the volunteers wanted to make a big show. It would be like the Diarmuid Rossa funeral in 1915, which stirred a lot of radicals. But this, the volunteers wanted a big show. But the British authorities said that the lying in state, the Lord Mayor requested the lying in state of his remains in the City Hall be conducted by volunteers rather than British military. This was met with a point-blank refusal by the authorities, but Mahon intervened to withdraw the military. Now, that's one thing he did, and then during the time of the lying in state, the Chief Secretary ordered that there be no processions or carrying of arms in connection with the funeral, which was to take place on the 30th of September. General Mahon, acting on his own initiative, confined his troops to barracks, and the funeral proceeded without interference. So that's, again, he was trying to calm the waters here. Now, that rebounded him because he was, I'd imagine he could have been the reason why he was moved from Ireland. But anyway, this is the cover of the statement of Cosgrave, Liam T. Cosgrave from the Bureau of Military History. He gave that 1947, I think. So, that's a photograph of the honour guard around Ashes. It was in the City Hall in Dublin, the honour guard. There's the rotunda room there, and you can see the honour guard volunteers. Cosgrave concludes his statement on the issue by stating that it was a token of appreciation for this that subsequently nominated Sir Brian Mahon as a senator. During his time in the Senate, he had advocated for the better treatment of ex-servicemen. Despite his trying to promote a conciliatory line during the Civil War, his residence in Mullaboden was burned down by the anti-treatyites in 1923. Okay, just moving on then. Right, Mullaboden, Burke's Guide to Country House describes Mullaboden as an irregular two-storey Italian house with high roofs on bracket cornices and a campanile tower with a balcony on consoles over the centre of the entrance front. I presume everybody knows what a cornice is. You see them inside the house between the ceiling and the wall. You see them outside roofs. They have a function to keep up the roof, but I think they're ornamental as well. It was erected in the 1850s by a guy called Charles Hoffman, who sold to the Colonel Charles Crichton, the son of the 3rd Earl of Erin, who was Lady Mahon's father. On 16th of February 1923, 7 men dressed in National Army uniforms and one in a Civic Guard uniform arrived in a motor lorry, held up the gardener and other workers about the place, entered the house and sprinkling with petrol set it on fire. They didn't have any room, put the furniture in the middle. This was a common way to burn the houses. Knocked in the windows to leave in air and set the furniture on fire. Now, one of the men took out a gramophone and he played a record on it and coolly played a record outside while watching the blaze. Another man took General Mahon's uniform and wore it mockingly. Oh, by the way, the Mahons weren't in the house when this happened. They had left because of something that had happened just before. They departed the scene with the gramophone, binoculars and other items after warning the servants not to move from the place. Binoculars will become important later on. A group of three troops from the Naas followed the tracks that came across 15 men in army and civic guard uniforms and civilian clothes near Baltivice, County Wicklow. The military opened fire on the men, but intense fire was returned. The troops sheltering near a house, outnumbered and running low on ammunition, withdrew without any casualties. The men who set Mullaboden alight were believed to be part of an IRA column operating in West Wicklow and East Kildare, led by Neil Plunkett O'Boyle. After this, troops from Calla, Blessington and Naas, with the aid of spotted planes from Baldaman, made several sweeps to the mountains attempting to apprehend the column. Now, what happened then, just a bit about this guy, O'Boyle. He was born in Burton, County Donegal in 1898. He went to Scotland he was a person of interest to the police in Donegal, and like any wise man, he got out of town and he went to Scotland. He joined the IRA in Scotland, and he was arrested and he was jailed in Scotland. But under the terms of the treaty, he was released. He went back, and what happened was he joined the IRA and he was arrested and interned in Newbridge Army Barracks in August 1922. There was actually 1,200 internees in Newbridge Army Barracks, anti-treatyites, a huge number. But 111 escaped in October 1922. I think it was the biggest ever escape in Irish history. I could be wrong, but James Darnay has written a book on IRA escapes, if anyone has seen it or read it. James Darnay and Ace, he's written several books, but there was 111 escaped from the barracks in Newbridge. He's made his way to Dublin, was appointed commandant of the 3rd Battalion of the Dublin No. 2 Brigade, and he was sent to, obviously he was very useful because he was sent to North West Wicklow in November to reorganise the flying column. For 6 months he operated the mountainous area between Tala and Glenmalure. Now at this stage he was what? He was born in, he was about 24. In the spring of he was living rough, probably in safe houses and that, with his column. In the spring of 1923, he wrote to his mother, even though I'm exhausted, that he was still in Michael O'Wire's country, but I will stick it out to the end. Okay? Now they were looking for him. The National Army were looking for him, and there was a group of foreigners billeted in Ballymount School in March, towards the end of March, and 3 of the privates went out. 2 versions of them, out looking for something to eat and went out looking to buy the kettle to a farmer's house. And on the way back, they were ambushed. And on the evening of the 26th of March, Private John Pender was fatally wounded on the National Army patrol. Another soldier was wounded but didn't die. A 3rd soldier in his evidence to the coroner's court stated that the 3 soldiers were making their way back to Ballymount village after getting something to eat, and a call from behind told them to put up their hands. Immediately, a volley of shots was fired into them. The court returned a report of willful murder. Again, they went out trying to search for these guys, without success until the 15th of May. On the 15th of May, 5 officers and 25 troops left Naas in a further effort to round up the unit. They proceeded towards Glendalough and then on foot when they reached the mountains. After 5 miles, an armed man is seen in the doorway of a house in the remote area of Knocknadroos. I don't know where people know where Knocknadroos is. This map isn't great. It's on the way to Glendalough, and it's, if you see Balnagree Bridge, does anyone know Balnagree? There's a white railing on the bridge there. Knocknadroos is into the right. It's a town's land in there. So what happened was, they reached the mountains. So an armed man is seen in the doorway of a house in the remote area of Knocknadroos. As some soldiers rushed the house, they were fired on by the men, I think it should be men who retreated inside. The troops surrounded the building and heavy firing ensued for 15 minutes. Then a man's voice asked for the 2 women inside to be allowed to leave. The firing stopped, and after a few seconds, a man ran out and was shot dead in later disputed circumstances. This guy was Neil O'Boyle. Oh, by the way, his name was Neil Plunkett O'Boyle. He took the nickname Plunkett, and he took that from Joseph Mary Plunkett, who was executed in 1916. He was a hero of his run-up. So, now, there was an inquest the next day. At the inquest into the death of O'Boyle on the 16th of May, Colonel Roger McCarley gave evidence that after intense shooting and the call for the women to be allowed to leave, a man ran from the house towards a wall near where McCarley stood. McCarley said he fired 3 shots and the man fell. The jury returned a verdict that O'Boyle died from bullet wounds discharged by a member of the National Forces in the course of his duty. In the follow-up, search of the house, the troops found, in addition to arms and ammunition, a pair of binoculars bearing the name of Lady Milbank, the name of Lady Mahan from her first marriage. So those were the binoculars that had been stolen from on a boat on the day of the burning. They were allegedly found in the house. But that's the official line anyway. Now there's an alternative narrative of what actually happened at the house. Before that, Neil Plunkett, sorry, I should have mentioned this, that's at the house, there's actually a stone there, a bit of granite engraved, and here fell on the 15th of May 1923, you can read it there, the noble patriot, Commandant Neil Plunkett. It's on the side of the house where he was killed. I don't know, have anyone seen that? No? It's a good bit off the road. Now, a guy wrote a book about this, a Corey Boyle's book. I haven't seen it. I got this in a book by James Darning, and a guy called John Heavey, that should be Heavey, not Heavy. He was a member of the column. He said a boy came out of the house with his hands over his head and approached a stone slide where he exchanged a few words with a Free State officer in inverted commas called, this is the quote, called Neil McCarley. Suddenly McCarley raised his revolver and shot Plunkett in the eye. He just shot him. I saw it all. It was cold-blooded murder. That's the second version. Now, Plunkett I still remember today. That's in Letterkenny. There's a terrace named after him there, and I think there could be a road named after him as well. There's a photograph from a gravestone in Hollywood. Yeah. It's O'Reilly family, and you can see on the left there, in memory of Lieutenant Thomas O'Reilly, Dublin Brigade IRA, who fell in action in Tinaho 11th of July 1922, and also Neil Boyle Command, killed at Knockdruce, 15th of May 1923, interred in Kincash County Donegal. He's not buried there, obviously, but it's a monument that is on the gravestone. So there's three monuments to the one up at the house, this one, the terrace named after him. Unfortunately, the guy who was shot, Private Pender, has no monument. He was 22. He was from Monasterevin. This is from Book of National Army Fatalities in 1922, 1923, and you can see there his second from the top, John Pender, dated 26th of 3rd. He was a private. He was killed in action, belonged to the 3rd Infantry Battalion, and he was from Derry Upter Monasterevin. Sorry, he was age 21 at the time, Derry Upter Monasterevin there. Now, I found something about him. I found his mother looked for a pension. When the government gave out pensions to people who were involved, who were volunteers or they were involved in the National Army, and there was another one as well, I forget which. But anyway, his mother applied for a pension, and there was a lot of toing and froing, and eventually she got a pension of 7 shillings paid weekly from the 3rd of February 23 to the 31st of March 24. Now 7 shillings in today's money is about €35 a week for what, 11 months? And then she got a gratuity of £100, £10 up front and £5 a month for 18 months, in case she'd spend it all together. Now £100 in today's money that's sterling. It's €10,000 in today's money. So you wouldn't do too much with €10,000 for your dead son. Now, in the archive, in the application, they said the family were totally dependent on the guy that died, John Pender, but his father was quite sick. Now the mother was illiterate because you can see that she's got other people to write letters for her, and she just signed it with an X. But in the file as well, there's a story where one of the fivers didn't arrive, and she writes a letter to to the authorities looking, never arrived, and it was found out later that the son had actually intercepted the letter and took the fiver. But the guards got involved, or police, civil guards at the time, but there was no charges. He got off. I'm sure he was not the first son to intercept the letter that was meant for someone else. But that's all in the file. And then there was a load of to and fro letters about that as well. Now, okay, why was Ballyborden burnt? It was on the 28th of, this is the Civil War now, well, you're in, the Civil War started in June 1922. It was kind of a conventional war for about 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, and then it became a guerrilla war. The national government, provisional government, there was a lot of damage being done to infrastructure and so on. The provisional government were getting tough. So what they approved, the provisional government in September approved a public safety resolution which established military courts authorised to impose death sentences on captured anti-treaty personnel who were found guilty of destruction of public or private property or the possession of arms, ammunition or bomb-making equipment. Now, in December 1922, 7 members of the Kildare Anti-Treaty Active Service Unit were captured and convicted by a military court for the possession of arms, ammunition and explosives and were sentenced to death. And they were executed on the 19th of December in the Corra camp, which were the first executions outside of Dublin and the largest individual set of executions in the Civil War. And in January, 34 executions of anti-treaty prisoners followed. It followed in January the highest number recorded for any month. Now what's going on there is they were trying to finish the war. Now you can look at 2 versions of this, of course. It's still a touchy subject today. There was people in the anti-treaty side were trying to finish it, but just people who didn't want to finish it. So what happened then was that Lee Lynch, who was the leader of the anti-treaty IRA, in January he issued the overseas commanding officers of anti-treaty divisions with Operation Order Number 16 senators. They said 3 state senators were placed on 2 lists, A and B. Those on the A list would be shot in their private for the execution of Republicans. The houses of those on B list would be burned. But the Earl of Mayo, Palmerston House, Naas and Mahon were on the A list, which means that they were to be shot. On the 29th of January, a small part of an IRA unit burned Palmerston House and told the staff it was a reprisal for the executions of the men in the court. Now actually the Earl of Mayo was in the house that night, Martin, wasn't he? And his wife. And they asked the question, are you here to shoot me? And they said, no, we're just going to burn it. I think they didn't have the heart to shoot people, that they probably knew, he knew them, and they knew him. So, Mahon, after this, of course, Mahon and his wife, they didn't live too long away, they had taken the death threat seriously, taken the precaution of vacating the house, and they'd taken some valuables with them. The order to shoot and burn the House of Senators likely to be the principal reason why Mullabotan was destroyed. Another possible explanation was that Mahon had been the commander of British forces in Ireland and was of aristocratic stock. Now, Professor Terry Dooley in Maynooth has done a huge amount of research in this, and he said there was loads of reasons. A lot of it was hatred of the British going back to the famine times especially, people lost their land, etc. Some of it was because rumours went out that the British Army were going to be garrisoned in big houses, and it had the black and tans, and some of it was done to take whatever they could from the big houses. There's a famous story in Mitchelstown that there's still a lot of stuff from Mitchelstown House around in houses in Mitchelstown. But anyway, so they were probably the reasons. So Palmerston and Muldoon were 2 of the 8 houses occupied by 3 state senators which were burned. 94 big houses were burned between January and April 1923. So a huge amount, as we said. As the fighting between the Free State and anti-treaty forces due to a close in May, the Free Government passed the Damage to Property Compensation Act, which dealt with compensation claims from the owners of big houses burned during the Civil War. Now it wasn't just for there was compensation acts for having their hay burned, etc. The files are in the National Archives. If anybody wants to see them there, there's loads of stuff. people, you know, cows being injured and so on, cattle being injured and so on. An application for compensation for the burning of Mulla Boden was made under the Act by Lady Mahon. Now the reason for that, I'll tell you in a second. The compensation case was heard on the 22nd of November 1924 in the 8th Courthouse. During the hearing, Lady Mahon said that under her father's will, the trusteeship held Mulla Boden House, and Lady Mahon was a tenant for life. She never actually owned the house. What happened was, in the 1890s, the British government were introducing inheritance tax and death taxes, and obviously it was in people's interest to put the house into trusteeships rather than pass them on in wills and so on. And she was a tenant for life in the house. She actually didn't own the house, but she could put in the claim. Now the claim went into was heard in Naas Courthouse. She claimed 60,000 for destruction of the building and its contents. The court decreed that the compensation award for the building was set at 10,865, with a partial reinstatement condition attached, which meant that she couldn't afford to build, with that money she couldn't afford to build the whole house, or rebuild the whole house, so she wanted to rebuild partially, not the full house. Now to do that, you weren't supposed to do that, but she got a reinstatement condition. She was allowed that. So the composition award included 10,250 for the furniture and 800 for the personal effects of General Mahon, plus the cost of the house. So they got 22,915, or 37% of the original claim. Mulla Boden House was later rebuilt, but on a smaller scale than the original house to comply with the partial reinstatement condition imposed by the court. Almost there. During his time in the Senate, Mahon advocated better treatment of ex-servicemen who had served in the British forces during the First World War. He devoted most of his later life to horse breeding and racing. He was one of the founders of Naas Racecourse in 1922, and he became the manager of Punchestown Racecourse from 1925 and was senior steward of the Irish National Hunt Steeplechase Committee. So, because of his obviously army experience, he was highly involved in the Irish racing business. In December 1927, this is something else strange that happened. Sir Brian and Lady Mahon converted to Roman Catholicism, and Lady Mahon died not long after, in the same month. And Mahon died on 24th of September 1930 at 9 Earlsford Mansions in Dublin, and he was buried in Mulla Boden. They had no children, as I mentioned. So that's that. There are my sources if anybody's interested in reading any further. If you're interested in James Dorney has a book. It's actually in the Journal of West Wicklow from 2011, and it's Death in the Valley. There's an article in it if you want to read more about Neil Plunkett O'Brien. Okay? And there's another book which is about Gallipoli, sorry, I can't see it there now. Oh yeah, Philip Orr, The Field of Bones, the Irish Division at Gallipoli, if you're interested in military history. It's a good one about the Irish Division. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much.